Welcome back to the FPL video and podcast. This will be the team selection for Double Gameweek 25. I've only got one free transfer, but I think I'm pretty much set in terms of which move I want to make to add another Double Gameweek player to my ranks, and also bearing in mind future doubles and blanks. We've got a clearer picture after the FA Cup matches, and I have covered this in my recent videos and podcasts, such as my chip strategy guide and also the transfer tips, the updated version, which I uploaded very recently. There is also the best wildcard team, my transfer plans, and much more. Use Your Fantasy content will return for next week as well, ahead of match day 10. Smash the like button of this video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of that content. Our aim is to get this to a 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 32,000 subscribers. Check all the links in the description below for my X, Instagram, Blue Sky, the Discord server, FPL League, Spotify, and much more. That includes my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. We got some major injury updates after the Merseyside derby yesterday, which ended in a 2-2 draw. Ndiaye was subbed off after 25 minutes and he looked absolutely devastated. And David Moyes said straight after the game, "We think he's probably kicked the ground and maybe jarred his knee or opened his knee up. We don't know how serious it is yet, but we'll look tomorrow." That doesn't sound very promising, and he does face Crystal Palace away next, then Man United at home. My plan was always to invest in him for Double Gameweek 24 and then bench him for the next couple of weeks and potentially sell ahead of blank Gameweek 29, or just to tackle other doubles and blanks, or perhaps just single game weeks. So with Ndiaye, it looks like he could be a sell at this point, but maybe hold on to him if you've got a strong 5-man midfield and 2 other forwards that you're happy to start this week, but we can reassess the situation in a week or two's time. He is a very cheap option after all, at 5.5 million. It is a shame. I think Ndiaye could have done fairly well against Crystal Palace and Man United. There is still a chance he features in those games, but it all depends on those scans and how severe the injury is. Now, something else to talk about is the red card that Arne Slot got towards the end of the game. But don't worry, if you picked him as your system manager, just like I did, that doesn't mean he is going to get minus points or be suspended and you have to change your manager, because as I've always said on this channel, it's basically the team that you're investing in, not the manager. So if they leave the club, get sacked, or get a red card or even a booking, they don't get minus points for it. And that is also made clear on the FPL website. And the other point is, will managers still score points if they are serving a touchline ban or suspension? Yes, the manager will still receive points despite serving a touchline ban, suspension, or being absent from the game. So don't worry, if you've got Arne Slot, I'd still recommend holding on to him. And if you are looking to activate the assistant manager chip this week, I think going for Arne Slot is still a very solid play. But as you saw the table bonus with David Moyes getting that draw against Arne Slot, it is massive. He got 22 points compared to Slot's 15. Of course, Everton scored 2 more goals in Double Gameweek 24, which does help things. But the other points that Moyes has over Slot all came from table bonus. With all of that in mind, let's delve into my review for Double Gameweek 24, which was eventful to say the least, and also just a very long process. It's been ages since the last deadline, but on Friday, tomorrow, there will be a deadline stream on this channel. Sells got a clean sheet and got 8 points overall in that 7-0 win over Brighton, which seems like such a long time ago. And I did cover a lot of this in my transfer plans video in more detail, but I'm very happy with Sells after some disappointing performances. Now, Trent Alexander-Arnold was my vice captain. He is no longer yellow flagged. He was subbed on around 61 minutes against Everton and got 7 points across both games in Double Gameweek 24. And he had a very poor start to the game week against Bournemouth. He was making mistakes and he was very shaky to start that game, and Bournemouth should have scored, but ultimately they missed some big chances. Colwill disappointed as usual, and I should have started Robinson over him, but only a difference of 2 points in the end. And Mykolenko, just like Trent, got 6 points in the first fixture of Double Gameweek 24 and just the 1 in the second match, despite starting the game because Everton conceded twice, and so did Liverpool, of course, but Trent came on very late. So in the end, pretty much the same from both on my Double Gameweek 24 defenders, but it was the likes of Konate, Van Dijk who did very well. And you look at the Everton assets like Tarkowski, Branthwaite, they were the standouts in this defensive line. And Jordan Pickford between the sticks obviously did the business. And the same goes for Alisson in the first game of Gameweek 24. As for my midfield, it was one man carrying it, Mohamed Salah, with 58 points as my captain, 29 as a base score. So those that triple captain in will be absolutely over the moon with this. And if you still got that in your back pocket and you don't want to use the assistant manager in Gameweek 25, I think going for Salah against Wolves at home and Aston Villa away looks like a very solid play. and on paper I would argue those fixtures are better than Bournemouth and Everton away, but Salah is fixture proof, and is he going to better that 29-point haul? It's possible, but I don't think he will do that in Game Week 25, but even if he gets 15 to 20 points, you'd be very happy with that as your triple captaincy score. Cole Palmer got an assist and also 2 bonus points, but was booked against West Ham last Monday. Anthony Gordon got a booking towards the end of that 2-1 defeat against Fulham at home, and he's now yellow flagged due to a knock, and he faces Man City next. He has 2 goals in 3 games against them, and all of them have come at St James's Park, to be honest, but he's got a great record against the Big Six, so to speak, and Gordon is still a decent option in the long term. But with Newcastle blanking again at 29, and also Gordon being such an easy route to an Aston Villa midfielder, I think he could be a very easy sell for a lot of people with that yellow flag in mind. And Brian Mbeumo blanked against Tottenham Hotspur. I think him and Vissa were just very disappointing in Game Week 24, and hopefully they step up in the coming weeks. But Chris Wood scored a hat-trick in that early kickoff against Brighton, and that pretty much gave me a very good platform to get a green arrow this week. Isak blanked, and he did virtually nothing against Fulham, to be fair, although you could argue he was quite close to scoring on one occasion. And Ndiaye obviously got that injury, which I talked about at the beginning of this video, and unfortunately he got 9 points, which is decent, but it was Beto who stole the show amongst Everton forwards. He scored a brace in the first game against Leicester City, and then the opening goal of the Merseyside derby. As for my bench though, it wasn't too shabby in general, and Arne Slot of course was my manager. He got 15 points across both matches, 10 for the Bournemouth win, and only 5 against Everton, so it was David Moyes who actually ended up winning that debate, and then Mohamed Salah triple captainers will be even more happier with how things have turned out. But Robinson with 4 points on my bench, that's the only kind of nitpick I've got. The rest of them blanked. Semenyo finally blanking when he's on my bench, and hopefully he can start returning when I reintroduce him into my starting 11. And Valdimarsson started over Flecken because the Dutchman was injured, but Valdimarsson was poor against Tottenham Hotspur and delivered 1 point overall. At this point, is it even worth talking about my other defender, Veltman, who got -1 points against Nottingham Forest in that 7-0 demolition, but to Brighton's credit, they produced a great response in the FA Cup, beating Chelsea 2-1 after being 1-0 down after the first couple of minutes, and they will face each other again this weekend in the Premier League. I've got Veltman, Colwill and Palmer in my 15-man squad, and very shortly I'll discuss my transfer plans and the way I want to set my team up with some benching dilemmas covered as well. But in terms of my rank and the points I got for Game Week 24, 130 for the Game Week is very impressive on paper with the -4 hit factored in, but the green arrow was only 99,000 places because it is so competitive at the moment. The safety score around my rank was 121. Some of you might have triple captain Salah and still gotten a red arrow, which is absolutely crazy to say the least, but I got a green arrow. I'm going to celebrate it and be quite happy with it, but ultimately I want to keep on pushing up the ranks because I'm not happy with the general rank I'm at the moment. So let's talk about my transfer plans for Double Game Week 25, and it will be very simple and quite similar to what I discussed in Game Week 24 as well, and also in my initial transfer plans video. Anthony Gordon to Rodgers seems like such a simple move to make. The only downside to this is that Rodgers is 2 yellow cards away from suspension, and if he picks up those 2 yellow cards before Aston Villa have played their 32nd league game, Rodgers will serve a 2-game suspension. Anthony Gordon is currently yellow flagged. He's facing Man City away, where I think the likes of Gordon, Isak and Murphy can cause some damage and get a few goals there. But at the same time, Newcastle have a terrible record against Manchester City over the years, particularly at the Etihad. So I think selling Gordon makes a lot of sense in my case, but I've only got 1 free transfer, so there is the possibility that I end up rolling and trying to save as many as possible to maybe navigate blank Game Week 29 without the use of the free hit. And Morgan Rodgers could go up in price tonight to 5.7 million, but ultimately the most likely transfer I will make this week is Gordon to Morgan Rodgers. If I want to go a bit maverick, and I could do both transfers at the same time for a -4 hit, Isak to Watkins could be another move where I really just hone in on Double Game Week 25, be aggressive, and I think Watkins has a high ceiling, having 2 home games against Ipswich Town and Liverpool, but at the same time, he's also yellow flagged at the moment. He missed the FA Cup tie against Tottenham Hotspur in a 2-1 victory for Aston Villa, but I would back him to start in this game. Unai Emery said last week that he hopes that he is back in training ahead of Double Game Week 25, and Isak is in great form across all competitions. He got a full rest in the FA Cup against Birmingham in a 3-2 win for Newcastle away from home, but I'm not so sure I'm going to make this move because I think Isak is a long-term hold. So with all of that factored in, this is how I would line up for Double Gameweek 25, and I'll keep it very simple between the sticks. Matt Sells is going to be my goalkeeper for the foreseeable future at the very least. I don't see myself making a goalkeeper transfer, and I should have gone for Pickford a couple of weeks ago, so that was a mistake of mine, but at least Sells got something for me in Gameweek 24, and now he's got Fulham away, which won't be easy, and actually in the reverse fixture, Fulham got a 1-0 victory at the City ground, so I think it's going to be a very tough game to call, and it could go either way. I've got several assets from both teams starting in this match, including Robinson, and ultimately Sells and Robertson can both haul at the same time, and even Chris Wood. But I think with Robinson, you've got the assist threat with 10 FPL assists this season. I don't think Fulham or Nottingham Forest will keep a clean sheet in this game, which I talked about in my predictions across my best wildcard team and trans tips videos very recently. I've also got Trent with a double game week against Wolves at home and Aston Villa away. I think Liverpool can keep one clean sheet in this double game week, and anything Trent can get in terms of assists or some bonus points will be the icing on top of the cake. And I'm starting Mikalenko away to Crystal Palace, who have been in great form, but most of their wins have come away from home compared to at Selhurst Park. Having said all of that, I'm not entirely convinced about Everton keeping a clean sheet this week, but the alternatives are Colwill and Veltman, and I don't see a clean sheet from Brighton or Chelsea either in their direct matchup. As for my midfield, I've got 5 of them starting with Salah, Palmer, Mbeumo, Rodgers, who could be my new signing. If not, it'll be Anthony Gordon in that midfield and Antoine Semenyo. And remember, Gordon and Ndiaye are both yellow flags, so I've got 2 attackers who are doubtful for Double Gameweek 25, but I'll finally start Antoine Semenyo against Southampton away. It's a plum fixture, and back in Gameweek 6, on the wildcard, the first one I used this season, I introduced Semenyo into my team. He faced Southampton and scored, but ever since, it's been nothing but pain owning Semenyo. When I start him, he does nothing. When he's on my bench, he returns against the best teams in the country. So ultimately, Semenyo is fixture-proof, and he could be a bit of an FPL troll and not deliver as frequently against the so-called easier teams in the Premier League. But Rodgers, despite 3 consecutive one-pointers in the Premier League, and he's getting all these returns in the Champions League, a hat-trick back in matchday 8 against Celtic, and also in the FA Cup, getting man of the match against Tottenham Hotspur, I am backing him to do something in Double Gameweek 25, and that's why he ranks so highly in my captaincy rankings. Mbeumo has been slightly disappointing in the last couple of weeks, but against West Ham, I think that could be a high-scoring game in this London derby. I would expect both teams to score, and Brian Mbeumo has been one of Brentford's best players this season, as he has been over the years, but away from home, Brentford are just a completely different beast to their home matches, and even at the G-Tech Community Stadium, they have fallen off in recent weeks. Cole Palmer scored 4 goals against Brighton in the reverse fixture, and he should have been awarded the goal in the FA Cup, but it went down as a Bart Verbruggen own goal. But I would expect Palmer to do very well in the coming weeks. You've got home games against Leicester and Southampton on the horizon, and against Brighton, I think Palmer could be the difference maker once again. As for Salah, does anything need to be said here? Not really. He's the best captaincy option in every single week virtually. You might be able to go against him in Gameweek 26 when he has a trip to the Etihad, but even then he could do really well against Manchester City with their defensive woes. They gave up yet another lead against Real Madrid in the Champions League this time, while Salah is producing goals and assists in virtually every single game this season. Against Wolves at home, that could be enough to guarantee a double-digit return. Anything he gets against Aston Villa would be a bonus, and it's difficult to see him surpassing the 29 points from Double Gameweek 24, but never say never with Mohamed Salah. As for my front line, I've got Chris Wood and Isak, so I would be going for a 3-5-2 formation. For the first time in many months, actually, I've been playing a 3-4-3 in virtually every single game week, but I'm quite prepared to have just Chris Wood and Isak as my front line, and if I decide to be aggressive and go for 2 Aston Villa attackers, it will be Ollie Watkins replacing Alexander Isak, and I could always reverse this transfer in the coming weeks, but I'm not so sure if that's really worth it, especially considering both Aston Villa and Newcastle will blank in Gameweek 29. There is a slim chance that Crystal Palace versus Newcastle remains in Gameweek 29, but both clubs will need to fail to reach the FA Cup quarterfinals, and even then, it isn't a guarantee that the fixture will remain in Gameweek 29. The likelihood is that both Newcastle and Palace will double in Gameweek 33. Arne Slot is also my assistant manager, and despite the red card and missing the next 3 games against Wolves, Aston Villa and Man City, which is the duration of the assistant managership for me, it doesn't really affect him in terms of points as covered towards the beginning of this video, so don't worry about that. I'm covering Liverpool and their ability to get points. They've got a great chance to build a buffer between them and their competitors, Arsenal and Nottingham Forest, and considering Arsenal's injury situation, I think there is virtually no chance of that happening whatsoever. So I think Arne Slot could once again come up trumps and get a decent return, but those moving from Moyes will likely go to Unai Emery, and if they can get some table bonus against Liverpool, it could result in a massive swing which goes against Arne Slot assistant manager owners, and those that go for David Moyes and or Unai Emery will benefit from it massively and get a lot of points in their favour. As for my bench, I've got Ndiaye, who is yellow flagged, and that could turn into an orange or red fairly soon. That will be covered in the deadline stream. Hopefully we get more clarity on that situation, but the plan was always to bench him in Game Week 25. The same goes for Valdimarsson, Colwill and Veltman, and I've currently got Colwill head of the Dutchman, but the kind of thinking there is if I need to have an auto sub take place in my defensive line, I'd rather go all in on Chelsea than have Veltman up against my Cole Palmer, causing a clash in my starting 11. I already got one of them in terms of Robinson versus Chris Wood, and I'd rather avoid another if possible. But if you're kind of comparing Colwill and Veltman, they're both terrible FPL assets, don't get me wrong, but I think Veltman has been slightly better because at least when Brighton keep a clean sheet, Veltman can get some bonus points whilst Colwill does absolutely nothing. In terms of the captaincy though, there's really nothing to discuss. Mohamed Salah takes the armband and Trent will be my vice, unless I buy Ollie Watkins for Alexander-Isak. In that case, I would go for Watkins as my vice, and Rodgers is another consideration for the vice captaincy, but in terms of the armband, no one is taking it off Mohamed Salah, and that doesn't need to be discussed too much. Among single game week options, I think Palmer is the most appealing, but there is no chance I'm going to take it off Mohamed Salah this week, so that is really all that needs to be discussed. You can't captain an assistant manager, that's all been covered across all of my videos, particularly the assistant manager live stream I did a couple of weeks ago, and the chip strategy guide, which is still very helpful at this point of the season. But before I move on to fpl.team to visualize Game Week 26, let me show you the expected points according to Fantasy Football Hub, and there have been some changes since the transfer plans video I made a couple of days ago. So Robinson has gone from 4.1 to 3.8, and Trent has 8.4 expected points. It could rise now with the yellow flag now removed, and you would expect Trent to start at least one game in Double Gameweek 25, perhaps even both. But the likes of Sells and Mikalenko, their expected points have remained the same. Mikalenko's is fairly low at 2.7. The entire midfield looks very promising, and the fact that Salah has the same predicted points as Arne Slot is incredible, both of them at 15.5. Chris Wood has also gone down a little bit, I believe, and Alexander-Isak, but it's still very strong on the whole. I think Cole Palmer was at 7.1 expected points last week. It is now under 7, but still very strong in the grand scheme of things, and it looks like they agree in terms of the way I've structured my starting 11. They do recommend Colwill over Mikalenko actually, which I'm not a big fan of, but other than that, they do agree with my selections, and let's see how it all pans out, and hopefully not too many bench points in Double Gameweek 25. But let's now move on to fpl.team to see what their expected points is looking like and to visualize Game Week 26. As I've mentioned before on this channel, fpl.team is one of the best websites you can use in FPL to plan your transfers and to compare different moves and chip strategies. And for Game Week 25, the expected points for my team is 94.3, which is quite high for their standards. I think usually compared to other algorithms, you could say their expected points is less favourable, but they recommend starting Mikalenko over Colwill and Veltman, so they disagree with Fantasy Football Hub, for example. And in terms of the captaincy and stuff, Salah, of course, goes without saying 15.79 for him and 12.57 for Slot. But the main thing I wanted to show you was Game Week 26 and how things could line up. And one managerial change I'm considering for Game Week 26 when Man City face Liverpool is to go for Eddie Howe if Newcastle go 5 places below Nottingham Forest in the Premier League table. In the reverse fixture, Newcastle won 3-1, and if they can do something similar here, you can get a lot of points from Eddie Howe with a table bonus, and Newcastle are extremely strong at St James's Park, but they have lost the last 2 Premier League games here against Bournemouth by a 4-1 scoreline and also against Fulham, but I still think they're very strong in that stadium and can get a good result against Nottingham Forest. But I would not be going for Eddie Howe if there are no table bonus on offer. And I was looking at Mikel Arteta originally, but with Kai Havertz out for the season, Martinelli out for 6 to 7 weeks, and you've also got so many different players missing for the Gunners offensively, they are down to the bare bones, and their front three will be Wanyeri, Sterling, and Trossard is simply not good enough. and they've got no cover at all. They might need to play Marino as a striker or Calafiori, so things are looking bleak for the Gunners. Maybe Pep, if he can get some table bonus on offer against Liverpool, that could be a risky play that rewards you big time, but there is also the possibility I stick with Arne Slot for Game Week 26, but I have to kind of highlight this. If Eddie Howe gets those table bonus, or if he's eligible for them by the beginning of the game week, I'd be very tempted to buy him as my new assistant manager to round off this chip in the third and final game week, because I did activate it in Game Week 24. And if that was the case, I wouldn't make any other transfer and stick with the likes of Rodgers, who is my current likely transfer for Game Week 25, as discussed in this video. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What are you looking to do for Double Game Week 25 and Game Week 26, but also for future blanks and doubles like Game Week 29? Will you be using the free hit? I'm actually quite open-minded about when I'm going to use the free hit at the moment, but it's less likely I'll use it in blank Game Week 34 as things stand. So I'm looking at Game Week 29 or possibly in a double game week like 33. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. I promise to get this to a 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 32 subscribers. Follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky. It's Dylan RCM, and in the case of Blue Sky, FPL Dylan. Check out my Discord server, the FPL League, Spotify, and also my Patreon, as well as the channel memberships by clicking the join button on YouTube and also going to patreon.com/Dylan RCM. Like the video, all of that good stuff. It goes a long way to boosting us up in the algorithm. Keep your eyes peeled for more use of your fantasy content ahead of match day 10 and also for FPL, which includes the deadline stream tomorrow.